The NCAA is dying, at least when it comes to football, and they're doing absolutely everything they can within their own power to wield what little bit of authority that they have left. They're on a tear right now, and it's impacting nearly all of college football. They're imposing sanctions and adjudicating guilty verdicts all over the country. They're even some of the self-reporting that's going on is absolutely laughable as well. It's impacting the major brands across college football. We've seen it with Florida State recently. We've heard reports that they're investigating Florida. We've seen massive brands like UGA and others self-report, and it's even impacting Colorado, where Coach Prime is. Literally from sea to shining sea, you're seeing the NCAA trying to do what they can to have some power, have some authority. They barely have anything left when it comes to the transfer portal. They barely have anything left when it comes to NIL, and they don't even decide a champion at the end of the year. And so what little power they can get teams with, they try to. Have you heard of some of these sanctions? Have you heard of what some of these rules that teams broke were? It is ridiculous and hilarious, but let's talk about some of the funniest that have come out. Florida State got several level 2 infractions, and if you read the reports, if you look at what Florida State got tagged with, it ultimately boiled down to one thing. They had an offensive line coach, an offensive coordinator now, drive a prospect that was in the transfer portal on an official visit. He drove him to a meeting at dinner with an NIL collective. He didn't stay for the meeting. He didn't discuss terms. He didn't negotiate money or anything. He just drove him to dinner where he had an NIL meeting. When you think about what college football is right now and the pay-for-play state that we're in, I know you're not supposed to, but we all understand what inducement is, and we all understand that it happens at 133 colleges across the country. When you understand that, and you think about the fact that they were just punished. Alex Ekins at Florida State will now miss 3 games. He'll have a show cause. He'll have a lot of other penalties that came with that, a reduction in scholarships, less visits, you name it. It's there. For driving a kid to dinner, it's pretty absurd. What about Colorado? Colorado broke a few minor things, one of which being a yoga instructor came in and showed the guys how to stretch. Now, the rules are you can only have so many paid strength and conditioning coaches, and so by bringing in an extra one, you're technically breaking the rules, and that's literally what we're nailing Coach Prime for here. That's what we're getting for. He was on an Instagram Live and another one, and a kid joined, and so because that kid was on the Instagram Live, it's a penalty. But we talk about player safety and health and player safety and keeping their bodies right and everything else, but bringing in a yoga instructor to show the kids how to stretch, that's a problem. UGA got penalized and self-reported having flower arrangements and balloons in a hotel room for a gymnastics recruit that was visiting. It wasn't even football. But apparently you can't decorate the room in a certain way, according to the NCAA, and they had to report for balloons and flower arrangements. How about Florida? Theirs is probably the most serious, and a lot of people speculate of what they could end up getting in trouble for. I've had some people tell me they think it'll be level 2, but they could get some level 1 stuff for doing what everyone else does in college football. The Jaden Rashada situation was one of the biggest in college football when it all went down, and obviously the kid signed with Florida, ended up backing out of his NLI due to NIL promises that were not upheld, ended up at Arizona State under Kenny Dillingham. But the big issue was that they induced him with money. They told him to come to Florida and we'll pay you XYZ. Now, they didn't follow up on it. They didn't give him that contract. They didn't honor it. But isn't that happening everywhere? Jeremiah Smith went on record with 247 Sports and said, Miami and Florida and all these other schools are throwing crazy amounts of money at me, but I'm going to stick with Ohio State. And that's what he ended up doing. Now, there's no doubt that Ohio State was offering him money. There's no doubt that the other schools that he mentioned, Florida, Miami, others, were trying to get him to come for money. But he went on record saying that. Why is it any different for him and is Rashada at UF or anywhere else? That is what college football is right now. We're inducing kids with money to come play for our schools. This is not a shock. This is not anything new. But the NCAA will use whatever little power they can. And ultimately, when they have a smoking gun, when they have a kid that's willing to go on record, as I believe Rashada and his family were and others were, they then go and try to prosecute to the maximum degree of the law. Try to get them for as much as they can. Try to fine them and bring in more money for their institution. However, is that what's right? No, absolutely not. We know what this is. And they're trying their best to, again, wield what little power they have. But a car ride, balloons and flowers, a yoga instructor. And again, I know UF seriously broke the rules with the Rashada stuff, but you're telling me the other 132 schools in Division I football aren't doing that? Newsflash, they are. Especially your big ones, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Texas, Texas A&M, USC. All of them are. And it just seems funny to me that the NCAA knows that they're dying, and so what they're doing is going after different universities, going after different schools to try and get any kind of power that they can for themselves. They penalize these schools based on scholarships. They penalize these schools based on budget. They penalize these schools based on who they can hire, who they can't, and then ultimately money. And that's what it is. It's a corrupt organization who has very little power left. And so they're penalizing people for yoga instructors, balloons and flowers, giving kids rides to school, or not honoring an NIL contract, which you're not supposed to offer beforehand. Did Florida break the rules? Yes. Did Colorado break the rules? Yes. Did Florida State break the rules? Yes. That's not necessarily the conversation. It's the method of which the NCAA goes after this. It's the way that they're proving themselves irrelevant. We talked about in another video how the NCAA certainly seems like they're dying right now. And if you missed that video or want to check that out based on some tweets recently from Ross Dellinger, you can click the video on the screen right now to watch it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and checking out College Football Addiction.